Hello, Mr. Nicholls. So
David, how
good.
you doing?
I'm doing great. And here's my colleague, Tamara Ugolini. No, it's been almost a year since we first met. If I recall, it was last August. You were given that cruel ultimatum of
Yeah.
either get the jab or you're out of a job. And as I said earlier, the Doug Ford kept the promise. In that case, you were thrown out of caucus. And now here you are running as an independent. Rick, what do you make of this election? I was just saying to Tamara, usually when you see the cost of living skyrocketing, as we have seen, usually when you see major healthcare issues, this is very bad news for the incumbent. But all the polls are showing the Ford PCs might have an even bigger majority government here in 2022. Are you buying that, or do you have other theories?
Well, first of all, the only promise, as far as I'm concerned, that Doug Ford kept was when he threw me out of caucus because I refused to get the jab. But you know what? I mean, look, I'm now with the Ontario Party. I'm the deputy leader of the Ontario Party. Derek Sloan is our leader, and I'm very excited about that. I've been hitting the streets. I've been talking to a lot of people down here. Of course, they when Doug took everything, kicked me out of caucus, all the monies that I had for the riding association went over to the new guys. He didn't have to fundraise, and we started at ground zero. But you know what? With a name like Nicholls, Dave, I can run a campaign budget or campaign on a dime, so to speak. But you know what?
Good line.
Going back to your question, the polls. The only true poll is today, as far as I'm concerned.
100%. And we're just about 40 minutes away from the polls closing, Rick. Well, most polls, that is. Now, Tamara Ugolini, I mean, the COVID-19 and the politics behind COVID-19, that is your bailiwick. No one follows it more than you do here at Rebel News. First of all, what did you make of the fact that Mr. Nicholls had to face an ultimatum like that in the first place?
Well, it just was in line with what everyone else was dealing with. It goes to show that no one was immune from this awful knee-jerk government response that was implemented by the Doug Ford alleged Conservative Party. What was the campaign trail? What has it been like for you on the ground there, Mr. Nicholls, as you've canvassed? And are you garnering a lot of support? Do you have any faith in reigniting the seat that you currently hold?
Well, I certainly have a lot of faith in doing that, Tamara. But one of the challenges that I have, of course, is that with the new party, people are a little bit concerned about it. But I would tell them that, listen, I'm no longer with the Doug Ford Liberals. I'm with a true Conservative Party, the Ontario Party, and our values are truth and transparency, something that Doug doesn't do. Faith, family, freedom, and of course, fiscal responsibility, something else. I was in the last day when the legislature sat. They presented the budget. It was nothing more than a high five pep rally, as far as I was concerned. They can promise anything, and then they'll say, well, yeah, but we didn't vote on it. We didn't debate it. We didn't vote on it. So what I'm hearing at the door, I get a lot of positive people saying, oh yeah, Rick, we know your story. We know your story. And we didn't like what happened. Even people who have been vaccinated, I don't like to use vaccinated because in my opinion, it's not a vaccine. However, having said that, a lot of people are very supportive. I've had a few doors slammed in my face. That's okay. Even when I was a Conservative back in my first, second, and third terms, I had doors slammed in my face. So I'm kind of used to that. But that's one thing about politics. Your skin gets thicker, your shoulders get broader. But I will say this: every once in a while, one of those flaming arrows from the opposition find my Achilles heel, and I go, ouch! Now that one hurt. But you know what? I'm being optimistic. The polls aren't showing it, but I'm not paying any attention to those polls because I said earlier, the real poll rather is today, and we'll see what happens. I think that I could be a sleeper and come back in and reclaim my MPP ship, as I call it.
Rick, but I got to ask you a question. I hear this all the time from people that given how many MPPs were thrown out of the PC caucus, given that we have multiple alternative parties, the Ontario Party, the New Blue Party, wouldn't it have made more sense if somehow you could have all got together? Because then we're talking, a significant degree of critical mass, of traction in terms of elected MPPs. Why do people have to choose between, well, I guess the two front-running alternative Conservative parties would be indeed the Ontario Party and the New Blue Party. What is the answer there, Rick, in terms of why you couldn't get together as one entity?
Well, David, and that's a great question. If Doug had thrown a few more people out of caucus, we'd be in the majority and he'd be in the minority. Yeah. Kind of the way it goes. But to answer your question, Derek Sloan and I reached out to the leader of the New Blue and to his wife several times, and they just ignored us. Their story is going to be different, obviously, but we wanted to work together. And if nothing else, we said, look, let's not put a New Blue in Rick's riding or Derek's riding, and we won't put an Ontario Party candidate in Cambridge, and I think he's running in Kitchener-Waterloo, if I'm not mistaken. So we wouldn't do that. But you know what? He said nope. And so I'm faced with a New Blue candidate. Nice person, but again, they're going to take votes away from me. And I got thinking afterwards, his intention is not to win this riding because he knows he won't, but to make sure that I don't win. And that's how vindictive he is. And I don't agree with that at all. And then you have, on the other hand, you've got the Liberal candidate in my riding that all of a sudden, due to dirty tricks from the NDP and saying, oh, well, they didn't have the proper signatures and so on, it was too late. Finally, and then they attacked her family. She quit. So now all of a sudden it's just the NDP on the left, Doug Ford on the left, me on the right, and it's unfortunate. And I took offense to that. I said to another interview, I said, look, regardless, Liberal voters should have a Liberal candidate to vote for. And the NDP and their dirty tricks, eliminated that. And I said, I don't think that's fair, because that's me. You know me, Dave. I'm a fair play kind of guy. I don't like those kind of antics. Never have and never will. So again, we tried to work with New Blue, but New Blue wouldn't have anything to do with it. And he says he had 124 members in the, running in all 124 ridings. We had 105. And okay, so we had 105. But I would hope that if, in fact, they get seats and we get seats, and Doug Ford ends up with a minority, not with what the polls are saying, those makeshift polls, as I call it, then maybe he will be forced to work with us and us work with him, and we'll be forced to work together for a change. That'd be a novel idea, so that we could then have impact with the Ford government, because he's a minority and he needs us to help him get a majority so that he can pass legislation that he wants, not without first our input.
Hey folks, before you know it, September will be here. That's when the Conservatives are going to have their latest leadership convention. Do you want to get your news from the legacy media? I sure don't. And if you like the coverage we're bringing you, please go to leadershipreports.ca. That's leadershipreports.ca. And if you can chip in $1 or $3 to cover our expenses, we would greatly appreciate that.